That was excellent. Thank you, Aram. Thank you to the organizers. Thank you all for being here. I have at this point given so many book talks, but this is the first one where I am genuinely nervous. 7 minutes. So, the invention of the future. So, the title here refers to how in the 1700s, especially in Europe, some began to imagine that the future, or at least to increasingly imagine that the future would be very different from the present and the past. It would no longer be predetermined by divine or supernatural forces, but rather, increasingly, the idea among some was that the future was something to be built by humans on Earth. The book then is a history of cities as a major expression of that idea, and it tries to rethink the history of the modern world as amid a set of competing visions over what the future ought to be like. So the book and each chapter sort of moves across these large-scale shifts in technology, politics, culture, at the same time as it then focuses with greater detail on case studies in particular cities in moments of very major transitions in urban planning. So we open with the reconstruction of Lisbon after the 1755 earthquake as an Enlightenment capital. We then get to the early 1800s, the Commissioner's Plan in New York City, the Manhattan Grid, largely as we now know it, as an even more radically secular plan, or almost a plan without a plan. We then move to mid-19th century Paris with its very famous reforms under Napoleon III as a city that then becomes a model and an image for urban futures throughout the globe. We now arrive to the early 1900s in Rio de Janeiro in Rio, Brazil's capital, so one of the instances where Paris becomes a model, but now in the city on the wake of abolition. We then get to chapter 5 in Buenos Aires in the 20s and 30s, which is a particularly rich case study through which to think of various crossroads and many different planning paradigms, most of which are now understanding that you really have to think of urban futures at a metropolitan scale. And then the last case study is post-World War II Lagos, but also suburbia and Brasilia, the very overwhelming victory of the car-centric planning and urbanization, the explosion of self-built neighborhoods, and then, of course, the present of megalopolises and the urban boom, now largely outside of the Atlantic world. Oh, I forgot to put the timer. So it's a history of cities through the perspectives of planners, but also all kinds of people that lived in and moved to cities in search of dreams, desires. It's a story of their aspirations, their anxieties, as you might imagine. There's a very wide range of sources that I draw on, from official records and reports to oral histories, music, fiction. There are some 60+ illustrations. I try to take account of the role of data and deities, statistics and stories. There's an arc in these 3 centuries towards human confidence in our ability to shape the built environment. And then, more or less around World War I, as a pivotal moment, the future becomes increasingly not just something to be pursued, but also something to be prevented. Utopias lose appeal, dystopias emerge. Of course, climate change will intensify that sentiment closer to the present. So dreams shatter, they foreclose, they fracture. At the same time, as the urban boom continues, people are still moving to cities seeking for better possibilities for themselves. So there are many arguments folded into these pages. The history of urban planning is full of unintended consequences. It's a history of unimaginable developments. There's a quote from 1848 which somehow captures this. What was scarcely conceivable yesterday is reality today and history tomorrow. One of the key arguments is that reasonable expectations, including data-centric predictions, tend to underestimate the range of potential outcomes. neither technical models nor our imagination have quite managed to keep up with developments over the past 300 years or so. History can therefore remind us never to assume any given prospect as inevitable, to stay alert to unknown unknowns as they lurk into reality. In the conclusion, we then have an argument around how sometimes yesterday's solutions become tomorrow's or today's problems, car-centric planning being chief among them, and how sometimes, conversely, yesterday's problems can become today's solutions. Density in a 19th century city produces overcrowding, disease, pollution. Of course, in our present, compact city fabric, transit-rich, can provide us with energy efficiency, dynamic, vibrant environments. So, I tried to make it a good read. I hope some of you will pick it up, and I yield. Was that the beep? A minute left. I will yield it. I'm afraid of, if I open up a new parenthesis, I don't think I could close it in a minute. So thank you all.